Dr. Amanda Wells hadn't slept in 36 hours, but the coffee growing cold beside her keyboard wasn't what kept her awake. Her eyes burned as they traced the patterns scrolling across her monitor for the 100th time. The data shouldn't exist, couldn't exist, yet the Deep Space Network's arrays had been picking up the same signal for 3 days straight. Running another verification, Dr. Marcus Rodriguez asked, placing a fresh cup of coffee beside her stale one. The bags under his eyes suggested he'd been keeping similar hours. The pattern's too perfect, Amanda muttered, pulling up another visualization. Nature doesn't work like this. Even pulsars have variations. But this, she gestured at the screen where perfectly spaced lines created an impossible geometric sequence. The observation room at Mauna Kea Observatory hummed with the sound of cooling fans and muttered conversations. Teams had been working around the clock since the first detection, and the atmosphere had shifted from excitement to unease as each verification confirmed what they were seeing. Washington's on the line. Jessica Thompson, their communications officer, called from the doorway. They're asking for preliminary findings. Amanda glanced at Marcus, who nodded. Tell them we've confirmed it's artificial. And she hesitated. Tell them it's a message. The decoded signal had started appearing in fragments 2 hours ago. Their quantum computer had finally cracked the mathematical cipher, revealing what appeared to be a warning. Each new decoded segment made Amanda's skin crawl more than the last. The message began, "To those who still see, retreat. Hide. The Watchers have tasted your light." Further decryption revealed the fate of the message's senders. A civilization that had achieved quantum supremacy only to discover they weren't alone in the cosmos. The Watchers, as they called them, were ancient entities that fed on consciousness itself, driving entire species mad before consuming their collective knowledge. Dr. Wells, one of the younger researchers, Tom Mitchell, approached with a tablet. "We've finished the trajectory analysis. Whatever sent this, it was running from something. The path shows sudden course corrections, like it was being chased." Amanda took the tablet, studying the erratic path the message probe had taken to reach Earth. "How old is the message?" "That's the thing," Tom said, his voice dropping. "Based on the decay rate of the quantum-entangled particles they used to preserve the data, less than a year. They'd wanted this warning to reach someone specific, someone close." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Amanda pulled up the last decoded segment, her hands trembling slightly. "They come for you next. 6 months. Prepare or perish." The observatory's main screen flickered to life as new data poured in. Deep space telescopes were detecting distortions at the edge of the Kuiper Belt, spaces where the stars simply vanished, as if reality itself was being drawn into a void. Amanda's phone buzzed. Text messages from observatories around the world confirmed they were seeing the same thing. The void was spreading, and in its wake, the stars were going dark. "Get me the Pentagon," Amanda ordered, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her gut. "And someone wake up the president. Tell them." She paused, watching as another cluster of stars vanished from their screens. "Tell them humanity just got a 6-month warning for an extinction-level event." As teams scrambled to relay the message, Amanda noticed something odd in the latest data streams. Where other species had reportedly fallen quickly to despair upon receiving similar warnings, human brainwave patterns monitored during message exposure showed something unexpected. There was fear, yes, but underneath it ran currents of determination, curiosity, and something that looked almost like excitement. "Dr. Wells," Marcus called out, "you need to see this. Global communications are lighting up with chatter." Someone leaked the message. Amanda rushed to his station, expecting panic. Instead, she saw something that made her smile for the first time in days. Social media was exploding not with terror, but with ideas. Engineers were already proposing defense systems. Artists were attempting to visualize the threat. Writers were crafting potential scenarios and solutions. Humanity wasn't cowering. They were preparing. "Send a message to command," Amanda said, straightening her lab coat. Tell them the human race acknowledges their warning, but also tell them something else. She looked at the screen where another patch of stars had vanished, her expression hardening with determination. Tell them humanity's response to this cosmic horror is simple. Bring it on. The Pentagon's underground research facility buzzed with activity as Dr. Jack Thompson stared at the quantum consciousness scanner's readout. His test subject, a former Navy SEAL, had just done something impossible. He created a ripple in reality through thought alone. Run it again, General Rebecca Hayes ordered, her weathered face illuminated by the holographic display. The rest of the Joint Chiefs watched from screens around the room, their skepticism evident even through the digital feed. With respect, General, Jack said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses, we don't need another test. Look at the patterns. He gestured to where the quantum field measurements twisted into impossible shapes. Human consciousness doesn't just observe reality. It interacts with it. We've been doing it all along. We just never had the tools to measure it before. Major Lisa Kennedy burst into the room, clutching a tablet. Dust still clung to her combat boots from her latest archaeological expedition. Dr. Thompson's right, she announced, swiping her findings onto the main screen. Look at these cave paintings. Indonesia, France, Egypt, Peru. They're all showing the same things. Our ancestors fought these entities before. The screen filled with images of ancient art, geometric shapes that hurt to look at, beings composed of impossible angles, and most importantly, human figures standing against them, their hands raised in defiance. The paintings are just the start. Lisa continued, her voice intense. Every culture has stories about humans facing cosmic horrors. We didn't imagine these myths. We remember them. Jack's quantum scanner beeped, drawing everyone's attention. The test subject's brainwaves had synchronized with the cave painting frequencies. That's why we survived last time, he whispered. Our ancestors encoded the defense mechanisms into our stories, our art, our very consciousness. General Hayes studied the data streams, her military skepticism warring with the evidence before her. You're telling me humanity's best defense against these cosmic horrors is our imagination. Better, Jack replied, pulling up his latest research. It's our ability to imagine horror and still function. Every nightmare we've ever had, every monster we've ever dreamed up, they'd been training us for this moment. The room's lights flickered as another quantum surge rippled through the facility. On screen, the test subject's neural patterns had begun emanating structured energy waves. Project Prometheus is ready for full implementation, Jack announced. We've identified 300,000 people worldwide with the strongest mental resonance patterns. Artists, lucid dreamers, theoretical physicists, people who regularly think in impossible geometries. Lisa stepped forward, adding her findings to the quantum display. And we've located 7 major ley line convergences that match the energy signatures from the cave paintings. If we build our defense stations there, we can create a planetary consciousness shield. A shield made of thoughts and dreams. General Miller scoffed from his video feed. Against entities that eat consciousness. Exactly, Jack said, his eyes gleaming. Because human consciousness isn't just random firing neurons. It's guided by something these entities have never encountered before. Purpose. We don't just think. We think about thinking. We don't just fear. We transform our fears into art. We're the only species that voluntarily scares itself for fun. The quantum scanner's readings suddenly spiked. The test subject, a man named David Chen, sat up in his testing chamber. I can see them, he said, his voice steady. In the spaces between thoughts. They're watching us right now, trying to understand. He smiled, an expression that somehow made the hardened military personnel more uneasy than any cosmic horror. And for the first time in their existence, they're confused. General Hayes straightened, her decision made. You have full authorization. Whatever you need. How fast can you scale this up? Jack and Lisa shared a look. The neural networks are already in place, Lisa said. Humanity's been building them for millennia. We just need to wake them up. Then do it, Hayes ordered. Because whatever's coming, I want humanity ready. Not just to survive this time, but to win. As the orders went out and Project Prometheus spun into full activation, Jack watched the quantum readings with growing satisfaction. Across the globe, human minds were lighting up like stars, forming patterns that even cosmic horrors would learn to fear. The real question wasn't whether humanity could fight back. The question was, what would the Watchers do when they realized they'd picked a fight with the species that invented horror stories, and then learned to enjoy them? Commander Mike Reynolds pressed his face against the International Space Station's observation window, watching Jupiter's moons dance through the telescope. The gas giant's massive storms seemed more turbulent than usual, its bands of clouds writhing in unfamiliar patterns. "Houston, are you seeing this?" he asked, adjusting the camera feeds. "The great red spot is changing." Static crackled through the comm system before Dr. Thompson's voice replied from Mission Control. "We're getting similar reports from observatories worldwide. What does it look like from your vantage point?" Mike struggled to find the right words. The spot wasn't just changing color or shape. It was folding in on itself, creating geometries that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. "It's like watching a Mobius strip eat itself, but with colors I can't quite describe." "Commander," Flight Engineer Sarah Martinez called from the station's science module. "The quantum sensors are going crazy. These readings match the patterns from the warning message." Through the window, darkness began to spread across Jupiter's face. Not the darkness of shadow or storm, but something deeper, an absence that hurt to look at. The space between stars started to twist, reality warping like heated plastic. "They're here," Mike transmitted, his voice steady despite the impossible sight before him. The crew of 6 gathered at the observation window, watching as shapes emerged from the void. "And Houston, they're beautiful in a weird way, like a Lovecraft story, but we're not the victims this time." The entities unfolded themselves into visible space, their forms shifting between geometries that human minds shouldn't have been able to process. Yet the ISS crew watched with fascination rather than fear. "Neural patterns holding steady," Dr. Thompson reported from Earth. "How are you feeling up there?" Sarah laughed, the sound bright and startling in the tense atmosphere. "Like I'm watching the best horror movie ever made, but in IMAX and with full sensory input. It's terrifying, but..." She pressed her hand against the glass. "We can handle it." The Watchers noticed them then. A tendril of void reached toward the station, its surface rippling with colors that existed only in mathematics. The crew felt the first probe against their minds. Ancient curiosity mixed with predatory intent. Mike smiled as Project Prometheus's neural defenses activated. Generations of human imagination formed shields around their consciousness, barriers built from every story, myth, and nightmare humanity had ever created. "They're trying to get in," he reported, watching the void tendrils recoil. "But it's like they're hitting a wall made of every scary story we've ever told ourselves. They don't understand why we're not breaking." The psychic assault intensified. The Watchers, used to minds that shattered at their touch, poured more power into their attack. But humanity's neural network held firm, transformed their eldritch horrors into something familiar, almost comfortable. "Houston," Mike transmitted, watching the entities twist in what might have been frustration. "I think we just made them blink." The void rippled again, but this time it was the Watchers who recoiled. Humanity's collective consciousness pushed back, broadcasting not just resistance but understanding. "We saw their horror, categorized it, and filed it away next to vampire stories and zombie apocalypses. They're retreating from low orbit," Sarah reported, checking her instruments. "The quantum field distortions are decreasing." "Wait." She pressed closer to the window. "Are they running?" Through the observation port, they watched the cosmic horrors pull back, their impossible geometries folding away from Earth's orbit. The void they'd torn in space began to seal itself, stars reappearing like pixels refreshing on a screen. Not running, Mike corrected, understanding flowing through the neural network. Regrouping. They've never met anything like us before, a species that looks into the abyss and waves hello. That's got to mess with their cosmic horror playbook. As the last of the void tendrils withdrew past Jupiter's orbit, mission control erupted in celebration. Humanity had faced its first direct contact with the Watchers and stood firm. But Mike kept his eyes on the space where they'd vanished, knowing this was just the beginning. "Hey Houston," he transmitted, "tell Dr. Thompson his neural network didn't just defend us. It showed us something else too." He gestured to where the void had been. "We can see where they go when they fold away. And I think we can follow them." The implications rippled through the neural network. Humanity wasn't just going to survive this encounter. We were going to take the fight to them. The hunters were about to become the hunted. James Martinez lay in the neural synchronization chamber, his mind connected to 12 other lucid dreamers through Project Prometheus's quantum network. The former Navy SEAL had hunted dangerous targets before, but never anything like this. In the shared dream space, he watched reality fold like origami around the edges of human consciousness. Neural sync at 97%. Dr. Thompson's voice echoed through the chamber. "Remember, your imagination isn't just your shield. It's your weapon. Every nightmare you've ever crafted, every monster under your bed, they're all tools now." The dream team floated in the collective unconscious, their minds merged into a singular hunting party. Through their shared vision, they could see the quantum wake the Watchers left behind. Trails of broken reality leading to their dimension. "Beginning pursuit sequence," James announced, his physical voice barely a whisper, while his dream self soared through impossible geometries. "They think they're the only ones who can navigate non-Euclidean space. Wait until they meet a species that invented M.C. Escher." The team followed the void trails, using humanity's natural ability to process paradox as their compass. Where other species went mad trying to comprehend these spaces, humans have been practicing with optical illusions and impossible objects for centuries. They found the first Watcher in a space between spaces, a realm where physics folded back on itself. The entity, a mass of angles that shouldn't exist, reached out with its usual psychic attacks, only to recoil as it encountered something new. "Now," James commanded. The dream team unleashed generations of human nightmares. Every childhood monster, every urban legend, every creepypasta story humanity had ever created crashed into the Watcher's consciousness like a tidal wave. Dr. Thompson monitored the quantum feedback from his control station. "It's working. Their neural patterns are destabilizing. They've never experienced fear before. They don't know how to process it." The Watcher tried to retreat, but humanity's collective imagination had already infected its consciousness. Through the neural link, James felt the ancient entity experiencing terror for the first time in its eternal existence. The hunter had become the hunted, and it had no defense against the monsters humanity had spent millennia perfecting. Second contact, bearing impossible degrees to the left. Sarah Connor, another Dream Team member, called out. "This one's trying to fold space around us." James grinned in both the dream world and physical reality. "Show them what humanity thinks about being cornered. Release the mimetic hazards." The team projected centuries of horror movie logic into the void. Suddenly, the Watcher found itself bound by the rules of human nightmare fuel. Looking behind itself caused time to skip. Running only made the pursuit more inevitable, and every shadow contained something worse than itself. Multiple targets retreating. Michael Chen reported through the neural link. They're screaming? Can cosmic horrors scream? They can now, James replied, directing the team to press their advantage. Humanity just taught them how. In the physical world, Dr. Thompson watched in amazement as the quantum readings showed the Watcher's orderly dimension collapsing under the weight of human chaos. Our ability to believe 6 impossible things before breakfast was proving more potent than any conventional weapon. "James," Thompson transmitted, "we're detecting a massive void signature. I think you got their attention. Something big is coming." Through the dream space, James felt it approaching. An entity that dwarfed the others, its consciousness vast enough to swallow stars. The dreaming team's minds synchronized tighter, preparing for the biggest fight of their lives. "Ready the cognitive payload," James ordered, gathering humanity's most powerful weapon, our ability to turn fear itself into entertainment. "Let's show them why humans tell ghost stories around campfires for fun." As the massive entity emerged from its fold in reality, the dream team launched their attack. They hit it with every horror humanity had ever conceived, every fear we'd learned to master, every nightmare we transformed into art. But more importantly, they showed it something truly terrifying. Humans laughing in the face of cosmic horror. The entity's response rippled through the quantum foam of reality. For the first time in its existence, a watcher knew what it meant to be afraid of the dark, and humanity was just getting started. Dr. Rachel Anderson stood in the ruins of Denver Memorial Hospital's maternity ward, her quantum scanner humming as she studied the newborn sleeping peacefully in the reinforced cradle. Outside, reality rippled and twisted as another watcher attack battered against humanity's psychic defenses, but the baby didn't even stir. "Look at these readings," she whispered to Dr. Marcus Chen, her research partner. "This child isn't just resistant to their influence. She's actively processing higher dimensions in her sleep." The baby, Emma Mitchell, was the 100th child born since the attacks began. Each one showed the same remarkable neural patterns, brain structures that seemed designed to perceive and manipulate the same quantum spaces the Watchers inhabited. A blast of void energy rattled the hospital's windows. Through the quantum-reinforced glass, they watched impossible geometries bloom across the Denver skyline. The Watchers had been hammering the city for 3 days straight, trying to crack humanity's expanding consciousness. "They're getting desperate," Marcus observed, checking the city's neural defense grid. "Every attack makes us stronger, and they know it. These children are proof. We're not just adapting, we're evolving." Rachel's scanner beeped, drawing their attention to a new reading. Emma had started dreaming, and her infant mind was already creating ripples in the quantum field. The nearby Watchers recoiled as if struck, their void tendrils writhing in what might have been pain. "Dr. Anderson," Lieutenant Sarah Williams burst into the ward, her combat armor covered in geometric burns from void contact. "We've got incoming. Big ones. They're targeting the maternity center specifically." Rachel nodded, unsurprised. They finally figured it out. These children are the next step. Human consciousness evolved to naturally perceive and affect higher dimensions. We're not just learning to fight back. We're becoming something new. The hospital's psychic barriers flared as the attack intensified. But instead of breaking, the defenses grew stronger. Throughout the ward, the newborns stirred in their sleep, their dreaming minds instinctively reaching out to reinforce the shields. "My God," Marcus breathed, watching the quantum reading spike. "They're not just reflecting the attack, they're absorbing it, using it to grow stronger." Lieutenant Williams readied her neural disruptor, but Rachel held up a hand. "Watch," she said, pointing to where the void energy was being pulled into complex patterns around the ward. The babies were transforming the Watcher's own power into protective geometries. "Evolution under pressure," Rachel explained, her eyes gleaming with scientific excitement. "Humanity faced predators in our ancient past, and we evolved to become the apex predators instead. Now we're doing it again, but on a cosmic scale." The main attack struck like a thunderbolt of impossible angles and cosmic horror. The hospital's regular defenders braced for impact, but the nursery had other plans. 50 newborn minds, dreaming the dreams of humanity's future, turned the attack back on itself. Through the quantum sensors, they watched the Watchers experience something entirely new. Feedback from their own consciousness-destroying powers, filtered through the minds of human children who processed cosmic horror as naturally as breathing. "Send word to command," Rachel ordered, watching the Watchers retreat in what could only be described as panic. The next generation isn't just immune to their attacks, they're transforming them. Every attempt to destroy us makes humanity stronger. Sarah lowered her weapon, staring in awe at the peacefully sleeping infants. They're not even scared of them, are they? To these kids, cosmic horrors are just normal. Better than normal, Marcus added, reviewing the neural patterns. These children don't see the Watchers as monsters to fear or enemies to fight. They see them as problems to solve, puzzles to unravel. They're already thinking in ways that make the Watchers afraid. Rachel placed her hand on the quantum-shielded glass of Emma's cradle, watching the void energies dance harmlessly around the sleeping child's dreams. "Humanity's greatest strength was never our ability to fight monsters," she said softly. "It was our ability to raise children who could look at those monsters and imagine a better way." As if in response, Emma smiled in her sleep, her dreams reshaping reality in ways that made even the Watchers pause to wonder. What happens when the cosmic horrors realize they're no longer the most terrifying thing in the universe? Professor Tom Mitchell stood before the curved wall of Shelter Complex 7, deep beneath the Appalachian Mountains, watching as Hannah Lewis painted with colors that shouldn't exist. Her brush strokes carved ripples through quantum space, each new shade creating harmonics that made the Watchers' void matter vibrate in sympathy. "The resonance is perfect," Dr. Sarah Jenkins announced from her monitoring station, tracking the painting's effect on local reality. "Each color corresponds to a different frequency of their consciousness. We're not just making art anymore, we're composing their undoing." The vast underground chamber hummed with creative energy. Musicians worked with theoretical physicists, composing symphonies in frequencies that could shred higher dimensions. Poets collaborated with quantum mathematicians, crafting verses that acted as cognitive weapons when broadcast through the neural network. "They thought driving us underground would break us," Tom mused, watching a group of children teaching their art teacher how to draw in 4 dimensions. "Instead, they gave us exactly what we needed, a space to reinvent human consciousness without limitations." The shelter's main hall had become a testament to humanity's adaptive creativity. Traditional canvas paintings hung beside holographic sculptures that extended into impossible spaces. A choir practiced songs that could only be fully heard by minds evolved to process quantum harmonics. Professor Michael Chung, one of his graduate students, rushed up with a tablet displaying new sensor readings. "The latest neural scans are in. The exposure to higher dimensional art isn't just affecting the artists anymore, it's changing everyone who experiences it." Tom studied the data with growing excitement. The human mind, already remarkably plastic, was reorganizing itself to process these new forms of expression. What had started as a desperate bid for survival had become a renaissance of human consciousness. "Send these readings to Dr. Anderson in Denver," he instructed. "This might explain why the children are adapting so quickly. They're not just being born into this new reality. They're being born into a culture that's actively reshaping it." A tremor ran through the complex as another Watcher attack tested the surface defenses. But down here, their attempts at psychological warfare had become raw material for human artists. Writers turned their cosmic horror into compelling narratives. Sculptors captured their impossible geometries in works that made the entities themselves flinch away. "New composition ready for testing," announced Jessica Martinez, lead composer of the Shelter's Quantum Orchestra. She stood before a modified synthesizer array, her fingers hovering over keys that controlled both sound and space-time. The chamber fell quiet as Jessica began to play. The music started in normal space, but each note folded reality in new ways. Soon, harmonies and colors and mathematics joined the conventional sounds, creating a symphony that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Through the neural network, they felt the Watchers react. The entities, drawn by the familiar mathematics of higher dimensions, encountered something they'd never experienced before: beauty that burned, art that could think, music that hunted. They're trying to process it, Sarah reported, watching the quantum feedback. But they can't separate the aesthetics from the attack. We're not just fighting them anymore. We're changing how they perceive reality itself. Tom watched as Hannah added the final touches to her painting. A work that seemed to breathe and think, its impossible colors reaching out to touch minds across dimensions. "This is how we win," he said softly. "Not by becoming better at destruction, but by becoming better at creation." The shelter's warning system pulsed, indicating another wave of attacks approaching the surface. But no one in the art hall showed any sign of fear. Instead, the musicians readied their reality-bending instruments, the painters prepared their quantum pigments, and the poets loaded their mimetic weapons. "Let them come," Jessica said, her fingers dancing across dimensional harmonies. "Every attack gives us new material to work with. They wanted to drive us mad with cosmic horror." She smiled as her music began to fold space itself. "Let's show them what human imagination can really do when it stops holding back." As the void energy battered the surface above, humanity's underground renaissance continued to evolve. In trying to break the human spirit, the Watchers had instead unleashed its full creative potential. And in the quantum harmonies of human art, a new truth emerged. Sometimes the most powerful weapons aren't the ones that destroy, but the ones that transform. Emily Parker hadn't taught philosophy in 3 years, not since the Watchers first appeared. Now, standing in a converted missile silo in Kansas, she watched quantum readings spike as she posed a simple question to the void. If a ship has all its parts replaced, is it still the same ship? Neural network registering massive disturbance, Dr. Ryan Cooper announced from his monitoring station. The thesis paradox is creating ripples through their collective consciousness. The ancient thought experiment, debating identity and continuity, had become humanity's newest weapon. The Watchers, beings of pure logic and absolute certainty, had no defense against philosophical uncertainty. "Push harder," General Hayes commanded from her tactical station. "What happens when beings that can't handle paradox encounter a species that thrives on it?" Emily nodded, transmitting the next layer of the attack through the quantum network. "If consciousness is continuous, how do you know you're the same entity that existed a moment ago? If you consume consciousness, do you become what you consume?" The void matter surrounding the facility began to writhe, its impossible geometries twisting in ways that suggested distress. The Watchers, for the first time in their eternal existence, were forced to question their own nature. Multiple targets showing signs of cognitive fracture, Sarah Matthews reported from the quantum imaging array. Her screens displayed the Watchers' consciousness patterns splintering under the weight of philosophical uncertainty. Emily smiled, remembering all her years teaching freshman philosophy. "Humanity's greatest strength isn't our ability to solve paradoxes," she said, watching the entities struggle. "It's our ability to live with them, to embrace contradiction, and keep functioning." The team had discovered this weakness weeks ago, when a group of physics students started debating quantum mechanics in the middle of a Watcher attack. The entities, drawn to complex consciousness, had been caught in the logical loop of wave-particle duality, a paradox humans had long since learned to accept. "They're trying to retreat," Ryan announced, but his voice held a note of triumph. "The paradox is spreading through their neural network like a virus. They can't stop processing it." Emily stepped up to the quantum transmitter, ready to deliver the killing blow. "Here's the real question," she broadcast into the void. "If you consume a consciousness that can embrace paradox, what happens to your own consciousness?" The effect was immediate and devastating. The Watchers' reality-bending powers turned inward as they grappled with questions they were never meant to process. Entities that had spent eons consuming minds now found themselves being consumed by doubt. Multiple quantum signatures collapsing. Sarah reported, excitement breaking through her professional tone. "They're not just retreating. They're fracturing. The paradox is forcing them to evolve or die." Through the neural network, humanity felt the change rippling through the cosmic horrors. Beings that had only known absolute certainty were experiencing something new, the ability to question, to doubt, to wonder. "Look at these patterns," Ryan said, pointing to his quantum displays. "They're not just processing the paradox anymore. They're starting to generate their own questions. We didn't just hurt them. We woke them up." General Hayes studied the tactical displays, watching as void signatures across the globe began to shift and change. "Is this what we wanted? To make them more like us?" "It's what had to happen," Emily explained, watching the transformation with a professor's satisfied smile. "You can't maintain cosmic horror once you start asking questions about your own nature. We didn't just give them paradoxes, we gave them philosophy." The quantum networks lit up with new patterns as the changed watchers began attempting communication, not the overwhelming psychic assaults of before, but tentative queries, like students raising their hands in class for the first time. They want to understand, Emily realized, reading the patterns. All this time, they thought they were consuming knowledge, but they never learned to question it, never learned to think about thinking. As the transformed entities reached out with their new awareness, humanity prepared its response. The species that had turned cosmic horror into a field of study was ready to teach these ancient beings something they had never encountered before: the joy of not knowing all the answers. "Send a message through the network," Emily instructed, her voice carrying the warm authority of every teacher who had ever opened minds to new possibilities. "Tell them we're ready to begin their first lesson in human philosophy. Let's show them why questioning everything is the greatest power in the universe." Dr. Ryan Cooper stood in the Global Command Center beneath Mount Chan, watching as humanity prepared to launch its final offensive. The neural network hummed with the combined consciousness of billions, their minds united in what would either be their greatest triumph or their last stand. All channels synchronized. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez announced from her station, "The quantum broadcast system is ready. Every human mind on Earth is about to become a transmitter." They had discovered the ultimate weapon against the Watchers wasn't technology or force. It was the entirety of human experience itself. Every story, every myth, every scientific theory and philosophical question humanity had ever conceived. "Begin the transmission," General Hayes ordered, her voice steady. "Show them everything we are." The broadcast started with humanity's oldest cave paintings, spreading through the neural network like digital fire. Ancient myths flowed into medieval manuscripts. Renaissance art blended into modern cinema. Every way humans had ever tried to understand their existence poured into the cosmic void. "The Watchers are responding," Dr. Emily Parker reported from her philosophical warfare station. "They're not just receiving the data, they're experiencing it. Every dream, every nightmare, every moment of human triumph and doubt." Through the quantum sensors, they watched as humanity's collective consciousness crashed into the Watcher's unified mind like a tidal wave of creativity and chaos. The entities that had once brought madness now found themselves overwhelmed by the beautiful insanity of human expression. "Look at these patterns," Ryan said, pointing to the quantum displays. "They're not just processing our history, they're being transformed by it. Our capacity to find meaning in meaninglessness is rewriting their very nature." The chamber screen showed Watchers across the solar system responding to the broadcast. Some retreated, their rigid consciousness shattering under the weight of human imagination. Others began to change, their void matter reconfiguring as they learned to embrace uncertainty. "We're receiving a signal," Sarah announced suddenly. They're trying to communicate. Not like before. This is different." Through the neural network, a new sensation emerged. The Watchers, beings that had consumed consciousness across countless galaxies, were experiencing something entirely new: wonder. They want to understand, Emily realized, reading the patterns, not to consume or destroy, but to learn. "We didn't just survive their horror, we taught them how to dream." The quantum readings shifted again as more Watchers joined the communication. Their ancient consciousness, previously focused only on consumption and expansion, now rippled with questions. Why did humans tell stories? How did they find comfort in uncertainty? What was this thing called imagination? Multiple void signatures are transforming, Ryan reported, watching the data streams. The changed ones are protecting Earth from the others. They're becoming guardians. General Hayes studied the tactical displays, where void matter around Earth had begun forming complex geometric patterns. Not guardians, she corrected. Students. The revelation spread through the neural network. Humanity hadn't just defeated the cosmic horrors, they had evolved them. The species that turned its own nightmares into entertainment had shown ancient entities a new way to exist. Send a message to all shelters, Hayes commanded. The war is over, but our real work is just beginning. In the months that followed, Earth became something unprecedented, a cosmic learning center. Changed watchers gathered in the outer solar system, their vast consciousness tuned to receive human broadcasts. Every story, every song, every new idea humanity produced rippled through space, teaching entities that had only known consumption how to create. Ryan stood at his quantum console, watching as a group of changed watchers helped establish the first deep space neural network. You know what the best part is? He asked Emily, who was preparing to teach the first philosophy class to cosmic entities. What's that? The other species they consumed. All that knowledge and consciousness they gathered. It's still in there, but now it's being processed through minds that understand wonder and creativity. We didn't just save ourselves. We might have just jump-started a cosmic renaissance. As if to confirm his words, new patterns appeared in the quantum field. The changed watchers were attempting to create their first story. In the space between stars, entities that once brought only horror were learning to imagine, to question, to dream. Humanity had done more than survive. They had transformed their greatest nightmare into their most eager students, proving once and for all that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't horror or fear, but the simple, profound human ability to look into the darkness and imagine something better.